Now, I think the most interesting thing is that she said they're going to appeal this, because she could have taken this as an off-ramp to end the investigation. She's not doing that.
That would have gotten Kevin Warsh on the Fed board, because then Tom Tillis would have said, okay, I'm not going to block this anymore. And that would have been a win for President Trump. And she said, I don't know who this guy is, and she doesn't care.
Well, isn't the question to ask, though, it was an off-ramp for President Trump to continue to pursue with his choice for Fed chair.
Exactly, and they're not taking that off-ramp, and Tillis has already tweeted, so, this really
What did Tillis said?
Tillis said, don't appeal this, because that's just going to delay the Warsh nomination, which is what we expect to happen now, because an appeal is likely. It could be done by... He said
the ruling confirms just how weak and frivolous the criminal investigation of Chairman Powell is, and it's nothing more than a failed attack on Fed independence. We all know how this is going to end, and the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office should save itself further embarrassment and move on. Appealing the ruling will only delay the confirmation of Kevin Warsh as the next Fed chair. Does this... Okay, this isn't your purview, but might the president want to delay Fed Chair Jay Powell maybe leaving? Is that not...
Well, it's interesting, because I was just looking at this to see what happens on May 15th when Powell's term comes to an end as chair.
Right.
And Warsh's nomination, let's say, is stalled due to this ongoing investigation and Tillis's, problems with it. And in that scenario, I think there's a decent chance that Powell has to step down from his chair position, not from the board completely. That's still TBD if he's going to stay on or not.
His choice on that.
His choice, although this probably, if the investigation continues, probably motivates him to stay on the board even when he's not chair. But I think he'll have to step down as chair on May 15th. And then I think there's a good chance Trump could name Stephen Myron as acting chair. So, maybe Trump doesn't really care all that much about the delay if he's planning on naming Stephen Myron as acting chair at that point.
That's just kind of fascinating, because it does seem like Myron is somebody who would be much more to do some would say, the president's bidding, versus Kevin Warsh, who we have known his history of being a little bit more hawkish.
And just to be fair to Stephen Myron, he has said on Bloomberg television and in interviews that the president has never asked him to do certain things when it comes to rates.
Exactly.
Okay, so Elliot, I want to get to the analysis of the legal argument here, and really what Jeanine Pirro, the U.S. Attorney in Washington, D.C., what she argues is where the judge went wrong and how she's going to appeal this. What's her legal avenue for that?
So I haven't read the judge's decision. And by the way, notably, the judge here is Judge Boasberg, who has sort of been a thorn in the side of the Trump administration, because he's ruled against him on many things, from deportation to DOJ, and the Justice Department, I think...
She called him an activist judge.
Yeah, I think the Justice Department even launched an impeachment investigation against him. So, there's a history here as well. So I haven't read his decision. I thought it was notable that Pirro said that he cited probable cause as sort of the standard to issue a subpoena, which is not really... That's the standard to indict someone, not to issue a subpoena. It's sort of a lower standard to issue a subpoena. So if he cited probable cause as the standard that wasn't met to issue a subpoena, then maybe there's grounds for an appeal. But I haven't read the decision.
Yeah.
I read the first 2 pages, and it started with all the things that President Trump said about Chair Powell not lowering rates and things like that. So he suggested that this is a pretext, which, probably is right, but...
Elliot, I want to take politics out of this. If, let's just, go to a bizarro world, and this was actually a Democrat president in the White House who was pursuing something against the Fed chair, and this is how it's played out. Would you assume that the U.S. attorney for Washington, D.C., who we'd assume would be a Democrat at that point, would do the same thing and appeal? I'm just trying to understand, is this kind of crazy from a legal standpoint, or it's to be expected?
If they think the judge got the legal standard wrong, then yes, I would expect the Justice Department to appeal. If they thought they had, reasonable grounds for an investigation, if they thought it was leading to probable cause for an indictment, and they think that the subpoena was valid and the judge's standard for quashing it was wrong, then yeah, I would expect an appeal regardless of politics. But it's sort of hard to divorce politics.
Is it really?
In this scenario? Yeah, I mean, I think.
I'm trying to be fair.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to,
I think there has been, I mean, just there's a history here of President Trump trying to get rid of Chair Powell and, the Justice Department being much less independent than it has been historically.
So on that, and the U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro, I described her press conference, and anyone listening can judge it for themselves, but it was very spirited and energetic.
Right.
And I think not typically the type of press conference that we'd see from a U.S. attorney. She did talk about her background serving in different elements of the law. She did not mention her time on Fox TV with Fox, and which I think is fair to say at this point, where the president got exposure to her and then chose her for this position. What did you just think of the way that she communicated to the press and to the American people about her motivations here and how she's seeing the legality around this?
Yeah, I mean, it felt combative. It felt
That's
defensive.
a good word for it. Yeah.
I thought. I mean, you hit on this as well when she was talking about her, 30 to 40 years as a prosecutor, both as a DA and then I forget all
judge.
The other judge. Yeah, she has served in the public interest for several decades, but she did leave off the talk show component, and this felt like it was performative for television, which President Trump I think likes.
All right, so what are you watching for next? You said, to be fair, you haven't read everything that we've gotten from the judge in terms of his ruling. What are you going to be looking for as you do go through it?
Well, I'm going to be looking to see why he quashed the subpoena, what his standard was, and if there are grounds, reasonable grounds for the Justice Department to appeal it. They also said they're going to ask the judge, I think, to reconsider his decision. So that'll probably be the first step.
Right.
Before they then go to an appeal, which is only going to delay the Warsh nomination even further.
Elliot, what do we know about this judge?
So like I said, Judge Boasberg, he has a history with the Trump administration.
Who appointed him?
I believe he is a Biden appointee.
Okay.
Maybe Obama, but...
appointed in 2011 by President Obama
okay.
and then confirmed in the Senate.
Yeah, but here's something interesting. In law school, he was roommates with Justice Kavanaugh. And Kavanaugh was one of the, he's on the Supreme Court now, obviously.
Yeah.
He has been noticeably in favor of Fed independence, both in the Lisa Cook case and in the Rebecca Slaughter case, which is the FTC case that's sort of related, right, in terms of who the president can fire for cause or without cause. Yeah. And even in the Slaughter case, Justice Kavanaugh brought up questions about, what that case will mean for Fed independence. So it's sort of interesting. Apparently, Boasberg and Kavanaugh are still friendly. Not that this, influences their decisions. It's just sort of a little color.
It's a small world.